Okay, we are here with Pastor Mike Matthews. Thank you very much for joining us here today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, I have a few questions for you, if you don't mind. All right, so what is it about the Claysville area that inspires your ministry here?
I love being here because you really get a hometown feeling. Everyone knows each other, and it's a really warm community. Like the moment we moved in, coming up on a year now, people knew I was a pastor. When I went to introduce myself to people at local stores or the pharmacy, people already knew who I was. So the secret gets out, right? So it's a great community to minister in, and you really get to know everybody. So you have a real opportunity to share the love of God with everyone, because everyone knows you.
Okay, cool. Really? It went off? Okay, how long have you been involved in ministry?
I've been in ministry since I was 24 years old. Got involved with youth ministry as a youth leader. Volunteered for like 5 or 6 years at my father-in-law's church in Washington. And then my wife started helping me. And then we started dating. And then she helped me in youth ministry for a long time, 7 years, right? And then that whole time I was preaching as what's called pulpit supply. So when a pastor took a Sunday off, they call me, and I often felt like the backup quarterback of pastors. I rode the bench a long time and was hoping to get in there. So
Put me in, coach.
Yeah. So I always had a sermon ready, and you don't want to pray for a pastor to get sick, but when they had a sick day, I got called. So I've been in ministry since I was 24. So preaching, teaching, doing different ministries, guest speaking at different events. I've spoken to 5 people. Been at college revivals and stuff like that, where you have 200 people, and so. God was giving me a lot of opportunities to get me ready, but I'm coming up on, actually this week will be 1 year of being the pastor here at First Baptist.
What makes your church unique?
Our church is unique because we're very, now everything's coming back around in style. We're we're a traditional worship service, so we have hymns. We are truly biblical. We believe we're simple. We're a simple church trying to do big things through God. And I think that's what makes us unique, because we are not a church that has a big budget. I would love to say, we have flat screens and stuff like that. Maybe one day the Lord has it in our plans for us, but we're a simple church. And I love that this is my first pastor, because I truly can focus on just loving on people, teaching them the word, and we're not, bigger is not always better. So that's why I really love our church, is because I can really get to know everyone. I get to be everyone's pastor. In certain churches you get so big where the lead pastor can't know everyone. So here I can have a relationship with the parents and the grandparents and the students. They all get to know me, and I can all teach them at different levels the same message of the gospel. So that's why I like it.
Okay, cool. So you said that you were only approaching about a year being the head pastor here. So what is the biggest difference between attending a church and then being the head of a church?
Wow, that's a big question. You have a lot of responsibility. Like it or not, you are the face of the church. So, and being a former disability rights advocate, I'm very passionate about many issues. If people follow me on Facebook, they know I have a big mouth. So, being the head of a church, I need to be conscious in that whatever I say, people know that it reflects on the church. So, if I'm out of pocket, if I say something that's maybe not wrong, but just opinion based, and people don't agree with it, it can hurt the church. And I never want to do that. So I have a lot of responsibility that where I go, the reputation of the church goes, and I don't ever want to hurt the gospel, and I don't ever want to hurt the name of Jesus because of something I foolishly say or do. So when I got hired here, it was like I had a big feeling of, oh crap, this is really happening. I'm a pastor, so I'm responsible for just not, my walk with the Lord. I'm responsible for teaching biblical truth, living biblical truth, modeling it, and helping people engage in their own personal walk with the Lord. I can't do it for them, but I can encourage them and support them in teaching them to get into the Bible and to trust God on their own. It's really, the one thing is when you're sitting in the pews, it's really easy to criticize the pastor or the pastor family. But when you're the guy, you understand the weight of this responsibility. And I'm a superhero nerd, so, with great power comes great responsibility. So I feel that every single day. I feel like I am responsible for, I don't want to teach them anything that's bad or wrong or false. Because where I understand that they're trusting me to speak into their lives. That's a big responsibility. So I never want to say things that are just my opinion or I don't want to do say whatever's trendy in Christianity at the time. I just want to make sure that I'm being true to the Bible, true to my faith, and it's a lot, and it's more on the family too, because the family, I'm paid to be the pastor, but there's an expectation on the wife and your children, because people expect things from you, right or wrong, they do, and it's just as the one that is the pastor of the church, I need to make sure that I'm walking with the Lord. So I don't hurt someone else's walk. So that's the big difference. When you're just attending a church, you can kind of hide out. You can kind of hide, even if you're in like a small group Bible study. For the most part, there's never a major responsibility on you, unless you're volunteer or you're a leader. But when you're the guy on stage, all eyes are on you, like it or not. But I like that. I like that pressure. I like the fact, because it keeps me accountable. It keeps me accountable to them, and it keeps me accountable to God, because I don't want to blow this. I don't want to lead people down the wrong road or give them the wrong advice. And I don't want them to pretend. I don't pretend like I know it all. Because the moment you do that, you realize you're foolish. So I just know, as a pastor, I humbly tried to model what it is to be a Christian for everybody. So,
what advice would you give couples that are looking into going into ministry?
Pray and pray and pray. You gotta make sure that that God lays His breath on your heart. Because if either one of you are not ready, it can hurt. It can hurt your marriage. Put your marriage first. Put your family first, and don't let ministry tear you apart. When my wife and I were youth leaders, we got married. In the first couple of weeks, all our arguments was about youth group. What was going on at youth group, but about the kids, drama. We love the kids, but we realized back then we had to take a break from ministry to just be a couple. And now that Robin always knew I had this dream on my heart and this calling to be a pastor, but there was times where she wasn't. She was always supportive, but when I was interviewed at a church, or even one time at our former church, the Bible Chapel started a campus in Robinson, and I applied to be the youth leader. I didn't pray about it. I didn't talk about it with her, and I got it. But I was only there 9 months because we realized, like, we were living in Washington, driving to Robinson every day.
Ooh, that's a drive.
And I mean, every Sunday. And she was pregnant with our son Reese. It just, the circumstances were not ideal. So what happened was I got hired at a local church in Washington. I stepped down from the role at Robinson Bible Chapel because I realized I didn't do it in God's timing. I didn't pray about it. I wanted to be in ministry, so there was a door open and I took it, but Robin wasn't ready. There's been other church interviews where they interviewed Robin and I, and Robin was like, "This ain't the church. This ain't." So you really have to talk to each other, pray. Both know that, like it or not, the wife needs to realize there are going to be expectations on her. And I really wish Robin was able to be here because she could voice that. Like, they're hiring me, and I'm the employee of the church. However, there, said or unsaid, there are expectations on the pastor's wife. And the funny thing is, even personal expectations, it can be really hard. So you really be a team. It's you two first. It's your marriage above everything else. Ministry comes second, because I have seen ministry hurt a lot of couples. So just make sure, pray, and just know that it's worth it. It's hard. It's not ever going to be easy, but I get to do ministry with my best friend and the love of my life, and it's amazing. Like, she has my back even when I'm wrong. She'll tell me I'm wrong behind closed doors, but it's my wife makes me a better pastor because marriage truly does sanctify you. I don't have to prove that I'm a sinner. I know I'm a sinner because I know how much I messed up in my marriage. So just trust each other, have each other's backs, put Christ above everything else, and go for it. I would tell couples to go for it.
Care to tell us your personal testimony?
Yeah. Well, I didn't really grow up in church as a kid. I came to faith when I was 19, summer after I graduated high school. I came to faith down at a church called Central Assembly of God. One of my best friends, Aaron Miller, he's a local youth pastor in Washington. He actually led me to Christ when we were teenagers. I was born with a disability called cerebral palsy. The doctors wrote me off at a very young age. They told my family I would never walk or be intelligent, and I actually didn't start walking until I was 4 years old. And I just grew up. I was mad because certain people would take me to faith healers, and they would try getting me healed. So I had this kind of attitude about life where I was mad at the world because they rejected me. I was mad at God because I was being taught that God didn't love me because I was disabled. And through all that bad teaching, Jesus saved me. And at 19, when I realized, it was funny because when I was 19, it didn't kick in until I was older, but God used my friend Aaron Miller to really lead me to Christ. But prior to that, an older guy pulled me aside one day and said, "Do you want to go to hell?" And I was like, "No." I don't know anyone that ever actually answered yes. But he led me through the sinner's prayer and patted me on the back and said, "Okay, you're in." I was like, "In what? Did I get a hat? Did I get a t-shirt?" Like, I didn't understand what I did. So it was through the friendship of my friend Aaron and me reading the Gospel of John that I saw that Jesus was God. And like I told you off camera, it totally messed my life up. I went from this angry kid with a disability with a chip on my shoulder. Like, I felt like I had to prove able-bodied people wrong. Like, if it was football or soccer, if I could beat an able-bodied person, I counted or something. So God taught me that He loved me the way I am. He died for my sins, and that He could use somebody with cerebral palsy to advance the gospel. Once I realized who Jesus was, I just had a desire to tell people. Like, I wanted to be a preacher. I didn't wake up one day and say, oh, I think I want to be a pastor. He did this to me. I didn't. So it was very early on, 22, 23, where I started getting preaching experiences at like the city mission. And I've been there now, going on 12 years. It's my longest preaching gig. And I used to tease the guys that were at the Bible Chapel in Washington, because when they first opened up, I was preaching on Sundays, and they took my gig. They took my gig because they took over the Sunday morning service. I used to tease them, and at that time, I started attending the Bible Chapel, and the residents at the city mission, they thought I was on staff. They knew me as the guy, so I used to have to tell them, no, I'm just a member here. So, yeah, it's been good. God has been good to me. I remember when I was 7 years old, and my mom meant well. She took me to a faith fair, and in the service, this woman said, I'm going to heal this little crippled boy. The whole service. I'm going to heal him. I'm going to save his healing to the end. And at the very end, she tried to heal me. And she smacked me on my head. And I wanted to go down. So she tripped me, hooked my leg and knocked me down. And I got back up. And I still had cerebral palsy. And she goes, I healed him spiritually. I was like, did I miss the fine print on the prayer? So I really...
Did I need to sign a waiver before I did this?
So I learned, and when God saved me, it truly was a miracle, because when He entered my life at 19, I gave up on God. I gave up on church and everything, because I just thought the only thing I ever seen was the prosperity gospel, the health and wealth, that if you're not rich or wealthy or healthy, God don't love you. But what God taught me is that in our weaknesses, He gets the most glory. And one of my favorite verses is 2 Corinthians 12:9, where it says, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in your weakness. That changed my life. Like, I stopped praying for God to heal me once I read that verse, I stopped praying for God to heal me. I started praying for Him to use me. And look what He has done. Like, it's amazing to me to this day that He's using the guy with cerebral palsy to be a pastor. Like, when the world wrote me off, when other churches wrote me off, Jesus was like, I got a plan for you. So, yeah. Cool. That's my testimony.
So, what is your response to people who meaning well, but think that if you pray enough, God will heal you? What is your response to those kind of questions?
I tell people all the time, we believe God heals. We believe that God still does miracles. Seek it. Pray for God to heal you, but also know that God says no. And that whether He says yes or no, it's all He gets the glory. Just a couple weeks ago, I preached on John chapter 5, where Jesus heals the man at the pool. The man's trying to get down to the pool to get healed. There's hundreds of disabled people around, and for some reason Jesus comes in, and out of all these hundreds of people, He heals just that one guy. And a lot of times we don't often look at passages like that and think, well, I'm told if I have faith I'll get healed. Well, Jesus chooses not to heal sometimes, And when he does heal, it points to the fact that he is the Messiah in the Bible, and that it points to a greater day. We know that one day I won't have cerebral palsy. We know that one day there won't be cancer, there won't be AIDS, there won't be suffering. But that we shouldn't focus on why am I not getting healed. We need to focus on that future glory. One day I won't have CP when I'm with Jesus. That gives me joy. And God has blessed me in other ways. Just because he didn't heal me physically, he has used me as a pastor. He has used me as a father. He has used me as a husband. So I wasn't guaranteed none of that. People told me I would never get any of that. So just because God tells you no in one area doesn't mean he's going to not tell you yes in other ways. Many times people want to come to God for the miracles of God and not God himself. So if you have Jesus, having Jesus is greater than having healing. If healing doesn't lead to you trusting God more, then what's the point? You know, if God would heal me and I don't have CP anymore, but I don't love Jesus, I don't want that kind of healing. If I need to keep this thorn of my cerebral palsy to keep me humble, to keep me in tune with God, I'll take that. But the prosperity gospel, they don't have a lot to offer people like me because they don't have an answer for me. They don't see God's glory working in disabilities, or any kind of suffering.
Right.
So I would tell people, don't yes, seek healing, seek miracles, but also seek God through it all. If he tells you, God answered prayers 4 ways: yes, no, wait. I miscounted, and my grace is sufficient. He doesn't always tell us. He don't always tell us yes. And the thing is, what people need to realize: no is the answer. No is the answer. God could tell you no, and we don't like to know. We start to say, "Well, he said no because of my faith." It's not about level of faith. It's about his will. So that's what I would tell people.
What led you to get involved in ministry in the first place?
I just, like I said, once I realized who Jesus was, and I just had this strong desire to preach. I didn't know how to go about it. We're told in the Bible we all get at least one spiritual gift from the Spirit. And I remember my young adult Bible study. It really all started with my young adult Bible study. We were volunteered to speak at the city mission. They were all like worship inclined, like they could play instruments and stuff like that. Well, I couldn't do any of that. I can't sing. So they're like, well, Mike, why don't you get a message? I was like, well, okay, I don't really know what to do. But I remember how God worked it. So my first sermon ever, I had like 3 pages of notes. We went to the city mission, and back then the city mission had big fans, and it blew my notes everywhere. So I just preached from the heart. I knew my passage I wanted, and I preached. And after that, my young adult Bible study, and the teacher of the young Bible study was like, I think you're good at this. I think God has a calling on you. And other people I started getting more preaching opportunities, and people were like telling me, we really think you're called to be a pastor. And through prayers, I thought I would be in youth ministry my whole life. I love kids. I love teenagers. I always wanted to show them the love of Christ. I was content I thought I was going to be a lifer in youth ministry. I either paid or volunteer. But as I got into the Word more, and as I started to study more, I really felt called to preach to all ages, to teach all ages, and just because God put that desire in my heart, it didn't happen for many, many years. He put that desire on my heart around 23 years old, and it didn't just. He answered that prayer a year ago. So I went through many interviews where they told me no, and it was heartbreaking. One of the funniest stories is I get a call from a church, and Rob and I go, well, let's go to the church and sit in the parking lot and pray. We were at the wrong church. So we were at the wrong church. So I didn't get that job. But I just want to help people understand God, and that's why I love being a pastor and a preacher, because I try to be authentic with people. I try to be real with people, and I try to have conversations about Scripture with people to make them think, like to consider Christ. If I could get someone to consider that Christ is truly who he says he is, I feel like I'm doing my job as a pastor. And that's all I want to do, get people to consider Christ. Because I believe once they start to look into the Bible themselves and start to consider who Jesus is, he'll awaken their heart. He'll do the work. I can't save anyone. I just can lead them to see who Jesus is, because I know that's what happened to me. I read the Gospel of John, and it messed my life up, and here I am. I'm a pastor now, so I love it.
So what led you to the First Baptist Church here in Claysville?
Well, it was pretty cool. So how God works things together. We came to. It was last summer. We came to their vacation Bible school, and Reese really loved it. And through the process, prior to that, for a year, I was helping out a small church out in West Middletown. Small church, 7 people. I was preaching there for a year. A buddy and I, he was helping me. We were training Sundays, we were preaching. And then all of a sudden, that summer of 2016, we heard that First Baptist pastor took on a new pastor in another state, that they were looking for a pastor. And just small talk, Robin was talking to a member that she knew that goes there, and they suggested I put my application in. And I really loved that this is my first pastor, because it's a very loving church. They have a history of giving pastors their first pastor. They have hired a lot of people out of seminary through the years. It just feels right. Like from the first interview, this really feels like our home church, and that we were meant to be here. And because the crazy thing is, well, they were considering me for pastor. Another church down in Waynesburg was considering me, and the day that I was supposed to go preach down there, as part of the interview process, we could tell by the leadership down there they were not going our way. We just, Rob and I felt it, and we both said in the car, no matter how, we're all human, and we all take rejection hard. Even though we realized that they were going to tell us no, we had peace about it, because we felt like God was calling us to First Baptist. We just felt like this is where God wanted us, and it's been a blessing. Like the day they voted me in, because the pulpit committee picked me, but the congregation had a vote on me, and I had to at least get 80% of the vote, and I got 100%.
Wow.
And that never happens. It was the first time that it ever happened, they told me. So we knew we were supposed to be here. And I am learning how to be a better pastor every week. And they're willing to let me learn and grow as a pastor. So that's what drove it. That's what called us to First Baptist. Like, God's hand was in it. Like, yeah.
And lastly, what would you like to say to anyone who might be thinking about visiting First Baptist?
I would say, give us a try. This church has loving people, and we have a simple approach to worship. We have a simple approach to ministry. We're simply a group of people trying to know Jesus and make him known. We're not going to be a perfect church. We're not. But there's no perfect churches out there. But if you're looking for an intimate setting where you get to really know people who you worship with, I would say First Baptist is the place for you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you.